Hi, hello, welcome to another one of these where I'm not showing my face again because as stated in the previous video, I have been going through a really rainy season in my town, and because of that our electricity situation is pathetic, and they're like, hey, it's all stolen, hey, the feed is tripped, hey, another explosion, and we just don't have electricity. So I figured, hey, you'd rather prefer me to be faceless instead of taking hours syncing up my voice and my camera so that you could see my face while I tell a story, or you could just have a proper story and have quicker videos. I just enjoy, okay? If you like these videos, please let me know. If you've got any suggestions, please let me know. But anyway, please enjoy the video. I figured I would share my ghost story that took place some 5 years ago, because why not? So this happened in the 9th grade, and after school, me and my friends would usually take the tram to get home. On this particular day, it was only me and one of my good friends. Usually we get off in the city centre to connect with another bus, but on this day, for some reason, we chose to take it to the end stop. We were tired and sleepy from school, I guess, and so we did. But this had now added an hour or so from our really long day, so we were really keen on getting back home. Though me and my small bladder needed to use the toilet pretty urgently. Luckily, my friend knew that there was an old metro train station just beneath where we had gotten off. This station had a medium-sized red building that served as a waiting area, I suppose. It was cloudy outside, and the inside building house lights were off. Not a single soul to be seen. Some ironic foreshadowing. The lighting inside the toilet was fluorescent as well. All this just really set an eerie ambience. I go do my business, but in the midst of that, I hear my friend just completely break down. She screams to me to hurry and come out. I laughed it off thinking she was being dramatic or pranking me, which wouldn't be crazy and plausible in my defense. But I do eventually come back out, and she hits me with a, I just saw a ghost. I'm just stood there thinking, what has gotten into this girl? She's Delulu. But she stood her ground and guided me to a mirror that was attached to a door, and she told me to just stand there and wait. Not even 3 seconds later, this ghost, who was clearly an elderly man, he was in a train driver uniform as well, very on brand for the location, comes obliquely from behind and just floated forward straight through the door. It all happened very quickly, and so at that point, I'm just screaming my lungs out and we sprinted for the exit. It was a very intense and a very interesting set of events to leave it at that. I've never been opposed to ghosts existing, on the contrary actually, but I've also found it hard to believe that they present themselves so similar to real humans. Now I know at least. This is a story I wanted to tell for a long time. My family has 2 people, me and my mother. My mother's a teacher. She teaches literature in a high school. I was still a middle school student at the time. Usually after a stressful day, my mother would go out with her friends. At about 2 a.m. she came home, reeking of beer. On the occasion of wearing nice clothes, she wanted me to take pictures for her. The front of my house is mostly a large glass door, with iron bars crossed to make a frame. She modeled in front of the door. After a while, I reviewed what I had just taken. Everything seemed so normal, until one that I noticed something strange. There was a white streak behind the glass door, next to my mother's face. I tried to take a closer look. Unmistakable, it's a face. A white face, with 2 black eyes looking straight into the camera in a creepy way, and a toothless white smile. Everything seems to be twisted into the center of the face. I have a feeling that this is not something that should exist. Like, I just saw something that I shouldn't have, but it's clearly appearing right in front of my eyes. I started to feel cold. The more I looked, the more scared I became. My mother noticed and wanted to see what I just took. I told her there was someone behind the door. She yelled at me, called me nonsense. But I know my eyes don't deceive me. And of course, her reaction confirmed everything. She immediately sobered up, told me to remember to close the door, turn off all the lights, and tell me to go to my bedroom. She also immediately entered her room and closed the door. The next day I checked the camera again, I couldn't find the picture. Maybe she deleted it. Since then, she and I have not talked about this anymore. I know I haven't lost my mind. I know what I see. And even my imagination is not an element here, because she sees it too. My family doesn't worship anything, and I'm not superstitious, nor do I believe in ghosts. But it was an event that 8 years later I still can't forget. When I was 14-15, it was late at night and I can remember lying in my bed. As I was falling asleep, I remember hearing a sound that woke me back up. As I lay in my bed, I could hear skipping and singing from downstairs. I thought it was my sister, but the skipping and singing kept going, and I heard whatever it was stop in the kitchen doorway and say, "Hello, kitty," in a happy childlike way. After I heard that, I got up and went downstairs to get my sister to stop. When I got there, she wasn't skipping. She was just sitting on the couch eating ice cream. I asked her about it, and she said she wasn't, but I didn't believe her. So I went into the kitchen where my parents were watching TV. So I asked them, and they said she wasn't. I remember getting so angry because I felt like everyone was lying to me about something so simple, but they weren't lying. I would know if they were. The morning after that whole situation, my mom asked me about it, so I explained everything. Then she told me about a lot of her experiences and why when we were done playing with toys that had batteries, we had to take the batteries out or else they would go off at random points throughout the day and night. She even told me about how when I was a child, she would hear voices through the baby monitor. The story happened in my hometown when I think I was about 8 or 9 years old. My hometown is very small, though there are multiple neighborhoods and the occasional abandoned house left to rot. At the time, I didn't know much of the town history, but I knew of an old building that was called the Old Town Name School by my classmates and teachers. Anyway, one day I was walking to school, and since the abandoned building is on my way, I took a glance at it. In one of the windows of the house, I saw a pure white curtain flapping around because of the wind. Behind the curtain were 3 elderly women. They seemed to be having a conversation before looking down from the window at me, making eye contact. I still have a vivid memory of the look on one of the women's faces, a face of confusion. I quickly broke eye contact and continued walking to school. I don't remember what happened that day except for that strange experience. I don't know what I saw that day, if it really happened, and if I was supposed to see it. For all I know, it could be a dream. The only people I have told about this experience were my mom and my friend. My mom said that I saw ghosts, like a past student of the school, but other than that, she laughed it off. My friend, on the other hand, was creeped out by the story, also telling me that I probably saw ghosts. For extra information, there is no reason for people to be entering the building, and there is no accessible entrance that I know of. The area around the building is covered in weeds, vines, and bushes. All the windows and doors are boarded up with wood, and nobody investigates the building's area. I'm not sure if I really did see ghosts, or if it was a dream. I might try to get a picture of the building when I can, to support my story. I previously posted some things that went on in my house growing up. The story I'm about to tell is the first spooky experience I remember as a child. I don't remember how old I was. Probably no older than 12. My younger sister and I were friends with our neighbor's granddaughter, who was often at her grandparents' house while her mom worked. We'd take turns to go into each other's house. The girl we played with, I'll call her Jay, had pretty much free reign over the house, while her grandma, who was a nurse, slept during the day. We weren't allowed upstairs though. The house was like my parents. Jay's grandparents were the first owners. They were very good Christian people. Jay had a rough childhood and was a pathological liar. We had a lot of drama between the 3 of us. One day while Grandma was sleeping, we decided to sneak upstairs. There were at least 3 bedrooms, beautifully decorated with antique furniture and decor. We decided to each pick a room and pretend it was ours and play house. We even had some baby dolls to play with. After a while, I began to feel uncomfortable, and like I was being watched. I met back up with Jay and my sister and told them I didn't feel right up there. My sister felt the same way. Jay told us that when she was younger, they heard voices from upstairs. It was hard to know when she was telling the truth though. Regardless of whether she was lying, all 3 of us freaked out upstairs. Every now and then, I'd look up their upstairs window from my house and get this awful feeling of dread. I have a ton of stories to share, but I'll start with a few from my childhood home. My dad built the house in the Phoenix, Arizona area in the early 1970s. Previously, the land was desert. Several of my siblings and even my mom had experiences there. Things would go missing and show up in the oddest places. I had an article of clothing disappear. I looked everywhere, including under my bed, which was very clean and tidy, and I couldn't find it. Later I looked again, and it was there in plain sight. My sister would hear the door open and shut in the early mornings when she was the only one awake, and the door was locked. We felt people watching us. We heard our names being called. Once I was laying in bed before school started, and I felt something like a cat walking on my bed. We had 1 cat at the time, and he was on the windowsill bird watching. He hadn't moved. I had some really creepy dreams while in that house that I now wonder if maybe they were more than just dreams. The house now belongs to my brother, who doesn't believe in ghosts, and his wife, who could be too scared to even consider there being ghosts in the house. I wonder if anything has happened since they took over. Both of my parents have passed on, and both of them did die in the house, so maybe. This happened to me in early 2021. I was in my art studio, which is sectioned off of an old distribution center from the early 1930s. It's situated right next to train tracks, which is actually cool when trains pass. It's now an antique store with lots of old doors, windows, and knickknacks from old houses. It's a cool building, but has definitely always given me the creeps. For no particular reason, I was there a few weeks after losing someone close to me. I was grieving and crying a bit. All of a sudden, I heard shuffling. It scared me. I thought maybe a rat or a possum was in the studio because it was so loud. I then heard super heavy footsteps manifest from the center of my studio through one of the walls I was sitting against. I could hear the sound of leather and rubber stretching in each step. It was similar to that sound you often hear in movies when there's a scene on an old ship and you can hear the rope creaking and the boat groaning. I know that's really specific, but it's what I heard. I heard it go towards my desk on the other side of my mini fridge. My studio is super open and empty, but there was one blind spot from where I was sitting. Terrified, I got up and peeked around the refrigerator and under my desk, expecting some kind of animal. And nothing. It wouldn't have made sense, since I actually heard footsteps, but an animal was logically the only thing it could be. There was nothing under my desk. I tried to recreate the sounds of footsteps, and it was pretty hilarious how weak and light my footsteps sounded. A year or two before, I was in there working. I have lots of 9-foot rolls of paper leaning upright in the corner of my studio space. I heard one falling over and dragging against the wall. It was a very distinct sound that I've heard before, because I'm clumsy and I have knocked them over myself. I spun around prepared to catch it since it sounded like it was coming towards me. All my rolls of paper were completely still. The scratching still sounded again, and this time I went up the wall and onto the concrete ceiling in the direction I was. I pulled my phone out, but I was a few seconds too late to capture the audio. Fun times. There are a ton of doors in the antique part of the building. I swear it looks like Monsters Inc. It's just always fascinated me wondering about all the memories and things those doors have seen. There's also a lot of old tools, sinks, 4-foot bathtubs, and an old dentist chair. So when I was born, my parents moved into this house. This is the first thing that happened according to my mom. This was in the early 90s, so they had an old style answering machine with little tapes inside. Well, my mom saw that there were new messages on the machine right after plugging it in, before our house phone was even turned on. When she checked the machine, there was like 3 messages, and all of them were from the same person screaming about how they were gonna burn the house down in the middle of the night, and how we were horrible people and didn't belong there. This is weird, but not immediately thought to be paranormal at all. So, as I get a little bit older, around 4 or 5, I started always feeling like something was watching me in the basement. And I would smell what smelled like a dead animal or rotting flesh. And at night, the lights in my bedroom would flicker off and on. I would hear scratching on the walls right next to my head while laying in bed. There were nights where I would have sleep paralysis while the lights would flicker off and on. As a 5-year-old, I had no idea what was happening to me. I was so deeply terrified, but was so young, I had no idea what was happening to me. I couldn't put it into words. One instance of activity was one night my sister woke up to a fire in the middle of her bedroom, in a kind of circle shape. She ran to my parents' room to wake them up, and when they came back there was just a burnt circle in the middle of her room. The fire had gone out, with no obvious explanation. So finally, I saw this thing that I now believe was demonic. It showed itself as a person sitting on my sister's bed, staring directly into my room from across the hallway. Its body was translucent and had no facial features, just like a blank face. He had a red jacket on with blue jeans. When I was 18, I had brought up seeing this thing to my mom in front of my sister. We had never spoken about this. And I look at my sister and she's bawling and saying she saw it too, which hit me so hard it was like a confirmation that I wasn't crazy and that this thing did exist. I've had a few other experiences with ghosts throughout my life, but it never felt like this. This thing was a demon, and I'm glad to say by the time I was 7 we moved out, but my dad still lived there, and I would have to go stay there on the weekends. I wasn't scared because I was so young. I could not process this stuff until I was older. One time I was staying there alone after we moved out, and I was sick in bed. The TV channels would change by themselves, but there was a lot that happened. My dad sold the house and I've never been back. And that is the end of that. If you like these stories, please let me know. If you have any personal stories of your own that you'd like to share with me and would like me to share on this channel, please let me know. Would be nice. If there's any other different kind of stories you'd like me to talk about, please let me know. If you would like to support the channel, my Patreon link is down below in the description. And until then, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.